Hejin walked through the quiet hallway of their Apgujeong penthouse, listening to the faint hum of the city far below the tall tower, feeling an unusual heaviness in her chest as she noted the absence of her husband once more for the third night in a row, her mind circling around the growing silence that had begun to settle between them like winter frost creeping over once warm glass, leaving her unable to ignore the changing air around her. She stepped into the living room, where the soft city glow bled through the wide windows, casting long silver shadows on the polished floor, and she remembered how Jaewon, her husband, once used to call her on nights like this, asking her to wait for him to return for late dinners that never came anymore, and she wondered when exactly the shift had happened, when the gentle warmth faded into something distant and cold, leaving her gripping the edge of the table, trying to steady the uncertainty forming inside her. Her friends had begun to make small remarks about him, careful words slipped during afternoon coffees as they exchanged glances hinting at rumors flowing through the upper class circles of soul rumors Hejin tried to wave away, though each attempt lodged deeper into her thoughts, like fine dust that clung stubbornly to the corners of her mind, making her question all the little things she once ignored until she felt her breath tighten at the idea that those whispers might hold truth she was not yet ready to face. She opened Jaewon's walk-in closet, noticing how the scent of his cologne lingered faintly in the air, but the sight of his suitcase missing told her that he had left in a rush, something he never did without telling her, at least a half excuse to keep up their image, and the realization settled heavy in her chest as she remembered the hollow tone in his voice earlier that morning when he claimed he had an urgent meeting somewhere in Gangnam, leaving her to stand alone in the doorway as he hurried off, without meeting her eyes outside. The city lights flickered against the dark sky like restless stars, and Hejin found herself drawn to the window, staring down at the endless streams of cars, wondering where exactly he might be at this hour, and why. The feeling of dread kept pulling her thoughts toward the same conclusion, a conclusion she had tried to deny for weeks, because admitting it meant shattering the life she had built brick by brick beside him in loyalty and trust, even if he no longer deserved either from her. It was nearly midnight when she finally grabbed her coat, brushing her fingers over its smooth fabric as she decided she could not remain still any longer, and she stepped out into the cool night air, letting the wind sting her cheeks as she made her way down the tree-lined streets until she reached the edge of the business district, where tall towers gleamed under the neon glow, and she paused, sensing that something significant was waiting for her just beyond the stretch of pavement ahead. She remembered the last time she had confronted Jaewon about his late nights, how he laughed lightly and brushed off her worries, calling them harmless concerns, and she recalled the way he touched her shoulder gently but with a strange distance, making her feel as if she were being guided away from a door he never intended her to open, a door she was now standing before as she approached the building where she believed he might be hiding behind smooth marble walls and guarded elevator doors. As she slipped into the lobby, she kept her gaze lowered, moving quietly among the late-night staff who barely glanced up at her, accustomed to seeing wealthy residents come and go at all hours, and she crossed to the elevator, pressing the button with a trembling hand, though she forced her breath to remain steady as the doors slid open, revealing the mirrored interior, where her reflection stared back at her, eyes filled with determination and fear interwoven so tightly she could no longer separate one from the other. The elevator rose with a steady hum, and each passing floor made her heartbeat quicken as she remembered the strange perfume she had once smelled on Jaewon's shirt, a scent she did not use, a scent she could not forget, and she realized that every doubt she had tried to bury was rising again, filling her with an urgency she could no longer escape. As the elevator continued climbing through the quiet tower toward the top where her answer waited, the doors opened. She stepped onto the dimly lit hallway, her footsteps echoing softly against the polished floor, and she glanced at the office door she had seen him enter once before, late at night, under the pretense of an emergency meeting, and she approached it slowly, unable to ignore the faint voices drifting through the narrow gap between the door and frame, voices intertwined with a softness that made her chest tighten and her breath come shallow. As she reached for the door, her fingers hesitated on the cold handle as she leaned forward, straining to catch the low murmur of a familiar male voice, mixed with another voice, softer, warmer, a tone that did not belong to her, echoing like a quiet confession against the closed space, and her hand shook as she realized that whatever lay beyond that door would break the last thread of hope she had been clutching for weeks, causing her pulse to pound in her ears as she pushed slightly, listening for just one more clue. Then came the sound she feared most, a gentle laugh from a woman, followed by the unmistakable closeness of whispered affection carrying through the gap, and in that fragile moment, Hejin felt her world tilt as though the ground beneath her shifted, revealing a truth she could no longer turn away from, even as she stood frozen, unable to open the door fully, as the final confirmation of betrayal pressed against her senses, leaving her standing there, suspended in the dim hallway, as something unexpected seemed to move just beyond the corner ahead, hinting that she was not as alone as she believed, and she braced herself as the faint shadow drifted closer, holding a secret she was not ready to face. Next to Jean stepped out of the courthouse with the final divorce documents pressed flat against her palm, feeling the weight of years slipping off her shoulders like chains falling to the ground, and for the first time in a long while she inhaled without hesitation, letting the sharp autumn air fill her lungs as she realized she was truly free, even if the freedom felt unfamiliar and raw, stirring a quiet fire inside her that had been waiting to burn. She moved into a small studio in Seongsu, a district buzzing with young artists and quiet ambition, and though the space was modest compared to the penthouse she had once lived in, it carried a warmth she had not felt in years. Its bare walls echoing with possibility, and she found herself waking early each morning, placing her sketchbook on the wooden table and sketching designs that had slept in the back of her mind, while she spent years pretending not to notice. Her marriage cracking beneath her feet. It was in this small room that her passion turned into her vision, and her vision turned into her determination, and soon she was visiting fabric markets, negotiating with workshops, learning the rhythm of production, and stitching pieces by hand when she could not afford help. Yet each night she felt the thrill of something growing just beneath the surface, something her heart had longed for, even when she could not name it, and this quiet momentum kept her moving as the city lights flickered outside her window like silent encouragements. Her first collection gained attention quickly, far quicker than she expected, and when a well-known influencer wore one of her coats at a major event, her phone lit up for hours with orders, partnerships and interviews. But beneath the excitement she felt a deeper satisfaction, a sense that she was finally being seen for who she was, not as Jaewon's wife, not as a figure standing behind him, but as Hejin, a creator with her own voice, her own story, her own rising path, carving through the glamorous world of Seoul fashion. Jaewon's world began to shift in the opposite direction as whispers about his affair reached the board, and investors quietly stepped away, questioning his judgment and integrity, leaving him scrambling to hide the cracks appearing in his empire. Cracks that widened with each rumor, each leaked document, each late-night meeting where he tried to maintain a confidence he no longer felt, and each loss slowly dragged him down in a spiral he refused to admit even to himself. As Hejin's brand expanded to a new flagship shop in Gangnam, the same district where Jaewon once strutted with untouchable confidence, she arrived for the opening wearing one of her newly designed coats, greeting guests with a calm smile that masked the storm she had weathered, while inside she felt a steady pride building like sunlight through winter clouds, and she noticed people whispering her name with admiration rather than pity, while her success glittered under the bright store lights like a declaration of her new beginning. It was only a matter of time before Jaewon found himself standing outside her store, his suit wrinkled, his expression weighed down by defeat as he watched customers line up for her designs, and he wondered how everything had turned upside down so quickly, how the woman he once used as a shield now stood untouchable before him, shining in a world he had never allowed her to fully enter, and the realization struck him like a cold wave as he gathered the courage to step toward her, hoping she might still offer him something, anything to stop his fall. Inside the store, Hejin sensed his presence before she even turned around, feeling the old familiarity brush against her like a fading echo as she faced him standing in the doorway with caution in her gaze and quiet strength in her stance, and he opened his mouth to speak, but the words tangled inside him as he looked into the eyes of the woman he had underestimated.